Hello, everyone, and welcome to this international episode of the 1871 podcast with Johnny Hunt, Dylan Kerr in South Africa, and me, Mark Roach. So Johnny's in Ireland, I'm in the UK, Dylan's in South Africa, and I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to welcome, without question, one of the greatest, if not the greatest goalkeeper in Reading's history. It's the one and only Shaka Hislop. So Shaka, a warm welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us all the way across the pond in the USA. So thanks for sparing your time to join us.
No problem at all, Mark. It's a pleasure, and then to be joined by Dill, no less. This really is a throwback.
Well, while we were waiting for you, Shaka, we've been hearing a few more stories about Utopia and
don't believe a thing Dylan says.
Yeah,
don't believe a thing.
We don't.
Yeah, exactly. But you all should know that by now.
We'll take your word for it. I think we trust you. But we wanted to invite you on, Shaka, not only because you are a true Reading legend. And when we talk about great Reading goalkeepers, you're up there. You know, a lot of Reading fans would consider you as the greatest Reading keeper that we've ever had. Also, Steve Death comes into that. I'm sure you've heard a few stories about him. The likes of Marcus Hanneman, etc. I think Emi Martinez played for Reading for a while, didn't he, as well? But that team was a special team with you and Dylan. But be really interesting to get your take on what's going on at Reading at the moment. Partly because you're based in the US, I believe you're in the Boston area. Is that right?
That's correct. That's right. I live just outside Boston now.
So there's so much interest in football, soccer, as not you, but other people over there call it. I think something like just under half of all the Premier League clubs are owned by Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a few championship clubs as well. You've got, you know, Tom Brady involved in Birmingham City, Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney, Wrexham, and Reading nearly had an American owner as well. So just wanted to talk to you about that. Obviously, you played for Newcastle, Portsmouth, West Ham as well. You played for Trinidad and Tobago. You also played a couple of friendlies for England, if I remember correctly.
A friendly as an overaged player for the under-23s as it happened. But yes. Mm-hmm.
So you've got obviously plenty of experience as a player and as an ESPN pundit. You know, football, soccer analysis over there. So from your perspective, and I'll bring Dylan and Johnny in to ask you about this as well. Why is there so much interest in the English game from Americans, you know, wanting to become owners and part owners? What's your thinking behind that?
Well, I guess I'm perfectly positioned to kind of comment on that. Living, as you mentioned, living just outside Boston. It was the local NFL football team that Tom Brady, the New England Patriots, that Tom Brady made his he played his entire career. Fenway Sports Group, of course, is Boston based. Fenway being the home ground of the Boston Red Sox. And I think Roma had an American owner, an Italian American, who was based just outside Boston as well, whose name completely slips me. So I guess I'm here at ground zero as far as American ownership in football goes. I think the attraction of Americans to well, certainly English and European football clubs is that the belief is that it's still an undervalued market. When you compare to NFL or any other sports franchise here in the US, the values for a closed, what are closed leagues, there's no promotion or relegation in any US sport, and that includes MLS soccer. And then you look at the values of those franchises, any of those franchises, whether we're talking an NFL franchise or even an NBA franchise. I was reading an article yesterday, or saw a headline yesterday about somebody saying that even at 6 billion, NFL franchises is still a good value, and this is a league of, I'll be honest, I'm not even sure how many NFL teams there are. It must be 28, 30. But again, it's a closed league. There's no promotion relegation, so there's no real risk to it. But still, it's a market of what population in the US is 330 million, something of the sort. And you contrast that with the world's most popular sport in football, as we know it, and the most valuable clubs in the world, and being able to invest 1 billion or whatever it may be to own a sports team. It's an easy fit, and they feel the market will eventually catch up. Will eventually catch up to football. So getting in now, while it may seem slightly inflated, is a good long-term proposition for sports ownership.
And Dylan, I'll let you jump in now. What do you want to sort of ask Shaka?
No, just apart from, how you doing, big man? How's the family?
I'm all right. Everybody's really well. Everybody's doing very well.
Good to see that you're alive and breathing.
Good to be alive and breathing.
You give us all a scare, to be honest. You give us all a scare. We're all going on these days, and it's still nice to see everybody's breathing and still alive. And it's good to see that you've turned that corner, and hopefully everything with your tests and everything got better. No, I mean, you talk about the franchise, and I don't know if you correct me if I'm wrong. An NFL franchise or an MLS franchise compared to an English being an owner in England, is it not different? Because as an owner in England, you sell 3 or 4 players for 50, 60, 80, 100 million pounds or euros. You get part of that, where if you do it from an NFL and an MLS franchise, you don't get a penny, or it doesn't go to the owner of the club. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
That's correct. It's a very different kind of business model here in the US. So first of all, with teams here in the US, and again, this is across all sports, there's a salary cap. So if you own a sports club, if you own the LA Lakers or whoever it may be, the Brooklyn Nets, or whether you own the Dallas Cowboys or the Washington Commanders, you are guaranteed a return as an ownership. You cannot pay. I think, and again, don't quote me on this. I think the player salaries is at about 60% of revenues, and then staff and other costings coming at another percentage. So there's always a return on your investment. It may be a minimal return, but there's always a return on your investment. Whereas you contrast that with European club ownership. Fans expect you to put your hand in your pockets, and largely that's kind of how things have gone. And as a result, you have these creative accounting practices, and I'm putting it as nicely as I possibly can, just in an effort to stay afloat. And then if you have a down season, or God forbid you're relegated, then all of a sudden you're in real danger of collapse. So there's never that danger of collapse, certainly in terms of ownership, when you own an American franchise. There's a much bigger risk to European club ownership. So as a result, you have to make sure you understand who you are as a football club, whether you're a selling club, whether you're a buying club, where those revenues coming in. So it's a different business model in its entirety.
And John, oh, sorry, Dylan.
No, just I mean, I've been to an MLS game. I've been to a basketball game. I've not done ice hockey. I've been to an NFL game. I used to be pitch side for Arizona Cardinals for 2.5 seasons, carrying a photographer's equipment just to be pitch side. And I always loved the fact that, if the kickoffs at 4 o'clock, people are in the car park tailgating, barbecues are out. They've got some people have got 5 or 6 TV, and I'm talking 50-inch TV monitors on the trucks because they've got all different games that they want to watch. Obviously, the weather makes that happen in Arizona, and you can actually spend a fortune, in a stadium watching the NFL. And like I say, the difference between in England, you go to the pub, depends 2, 3, 4, depends how mad you are. Hours before a game, after the game, you're in the pub talking about the game. It's really interesting to see the different dynamics how football and American football, especially American football, not so much basketball, is similar, but there's a massive difference because it's like, the families. I've gone to an NFL game. I've been invited with families, and there's been 20, 30, 40 people turn up with the massive trucks, SUVs as they call them over there, and the atmosphere is totally brilliant, but it's totally different to, if you're a football fan, when you go to the pub and having a crack and watching the early game and then going to the game, and there's a different dynamics in that, and I love it, both for football and American football, as well baseball and the basketball. So my next one is to go to an ice hockey game.
Dylan, by the way, that's brilliant. I've been to a couple of ice hockey games over there. That's fantastic because it's really, really fast. Been to a baseball game as well, and I came to Boston actually. I should have let you know longer in advance, Shaka. We could have had a beer or a coffee or something. But I saw Red Sox against New York Yankees. So really, when you first walk into Fenway Park, amazing. But it's a really different way of doing sport over there. It's all about. It's almost like the game is one part of the entertainment. But I want to bring Johnny in now to sort of bring it back to what's happened at Reading FC, because we've got an American owner a potential American owner who I think you thought he was going to be the owner as well. But Johnny, do you want to jump in now?
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask one thing before we talk about Reading. I just want, Shaka, great to talk to you again. So, what do you make of the choices of national managers for the United States? Obviously, Emma Hayes taking over the women's team there and been successful already, and then Pochettino taking over the men's side. What do you make, and what's been the kind of that effect for the game?
I thought it's been incredible captures for both. Sitting on the women's side, the US has dominated the women's game for so long. You could almost say traditionally dominated women's sport. They were kind of first in giving women that platform, even if it was just on the college level, and then the launch of their league, and you show the early dominance of the US women in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then the rest of the world started to catch up. And I think it was important for the US to kind of reestablish who they were, and that a little bit, and get a little bit more consistent. And Emma Hayes proved herself to be the best women's coach in the game by some distance. So it was an incredible capture for them. The Mauricio Pochettino was a little bit surprising. I didn't think the US could get Mauricio Pochettino. I thought, as a manager, given his record and reputation, that was a little bit beyond them. So credit to them, kind of given the difficulties and that they endured under Bear Halter, and recognizing how important 2026 will be to the US game. Credit to them in attracting a manager that I didn't think they would. I thought, had you left it 2 or 3 months and given kind of England's performance in the Euros, and then Gareth Southgate eventually setting down, Pochettino probably would have been on a short list for that job. Yeah. So for the US to get him when they did, again, I thought it was an incredible bit of business that I didn't anticipate.
Exciting times for them, isn't it?
Yes, it absolutely is. And listen, I know a lot will be made of the 2026 World Cup and how it factors into the broader the broader trajectory of the US game. I'm not so sold on that, and in much that an individual tournament, much like individual players, provide a boost, but then you have a job of keeping hold of those added fans. What does Major League Soccer do after Lionel Messi decides to hang up his boots? That's the truer test to the growth of this league, as opposed to just having Lionel Messi here for however long it may be. I mean, the way he's playing, it may be another 10 years, given how good he continues to be. But still, once he hangs up his boots, what do you do then to make sure that this new fan base, those players who are coming just to see Lionel Messi, who many regards the greatest of all time, how do you keep them coming back?
Ronaldo will come along and play till he's 60 the way he's going.
Well, you mentioned about Emma Hayes, Johnny, and of course the former Reading FC women's manager is now managing in the US, I believe. And Shaka, just talk us through, because I got a message from you to the extent of what's going on. I think we've all asked that question about Reading. As I say, we all thought, I think including you, we all thought that we were going to have an American owner. And so that was a shock a couple of weeks ago. What did you make of all that?
I'm surprised. I'm very surprised. Obviously, I kind of understand. Well, I'm not sure I understand, but I've followed as best I can the ownership issues over the last 18 months, let's call it, and the frustrations with that, the toing and froing about new ownership and the flirtations we're going into to receivership, but then given the new owners or prospective buyers kind of history in the game, I thought it was a done deal, and all the murmurings were, this is kind of, it's just a matter of time, and there didn't seem to be much issue of it. And then when he pulled out, I thought that was a red flag to me. I thought that was really concerning. And I followed what you said about it, and most recently about the kind of changing price, shall we call it, or certainly terms. Let's call it changing terms of payment. And then all of a sudden, again, you just wondered. Well, I think certainly that kind of took some of the pressure or the blame off of Dai Young. But now you have to wait to see what's happening, because I get it, and we all are. We were very, very partial towards Reading Football Club. Maybe we see this as a more attractive business proposition than somebody else, than just a regular businessman would, because of we're fans and because of our affinity to the football club. But Reading continues to be, for me, an incredible club. This will be an incredible opportunity for anybody. So to see this scenario kind of play out for as long as it has is a little bit concerning. It's a little bit concerning. But then again, I also have to recognize my own bias in that regard.
Yeah, and with the likes of Tom Brady, Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney, I think there was an American guy involved at Barnsley as well, subject to that film Moneyball. Billy Bean, wasn't it? He got involved in Barnsley. And as I say, I think it's almost half of the Premier League clubs now. So there's a lot more awareness, isn't it? Especially when you see the popularity of football in the US with the Wrexham documentary, Tom Brady, obviously a legend, and there's more awareness. So how likely, or what are the chances, do you think, that we might end up with an American owner?
That's difficult to say. Listen, again, I think American ownership and a lot of private equity firms out here in the US are always looking for that investment, and in particular that long-term investment, and football will continue to be that. Whether Reading falls on everybody's radar as a prospective as that prospective investment. I think it should, but whether it does or somebody beats them to that punch, it's difficult for me to say at this point.
And Dylan, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I'm just having a weird thought there about, imagine if Taylor Swift purchased Medeski and she played 10 concerts there, and she purchased the club for 30 million, and she played 10 concerts there, and then she'd added, maybe a Coldplay gig, a Rihanna gig, obviously Oasis. Take that, would probably come back. She probably
they wouldn't sell any tickets, so Dylan, take that.
Imagine she'd double her money in a heartbeat by doing that.
That's not a bad idea. I like that idea a lot.
I was thinking, because Shaka, we're footballers, we're ex-football, we're former Reading players. Why would you want to buy Reading Football Club if as it has believed that he offered 8 million and Dai Young wanted 3 times more than that, or whatever it were. Why would somebody want to buy a League One football club for more money than the owner of Wick, or the former owner of Wigan valued it at? We've always asked the question. Then obviously the other day, Mark told us that the deal was offered was pittance to what Dai Young wanted. What's the value of purchasing Reading Football Club? Why as ex-players, we know the value of the football club because we're part of it. We're a legacy. We're the history of the football club, part history of the football club, along with obviously Jiltsy and Kerry Dixon, Steve Death, Robin Friday, Jimmy Quinn, Mark McGee. All you can name loads of people.
Yeah.
Even Mark's dad. And so what's the proposition? What's the interesting proposition to buy Reading Football Club, and as a League One club struggling, up and down with results? Great result at the weekend. I didn't think they'd win that game, but great result for them at the weekend. What's exciting about buying Reading Football Club?
I think the attraction to buying any football club is the potential of Premier League ownership, and what that may bring, and kind of given the trajectory of the Premier League and TV rights, etc. Even the threat of the Super League hasn't dented the values of Premier League of Premier League football clubs. The challenge to that is, certainly Reading is well positioned, and that is 45 miles outside of London, so there's that market, so to speak. But even so, I wonder if that's kind of that affiliation with London and the parallel to the likes of Chelsea is a little bit of smoke and mirrors, because ultimately you wanted to take this club to the Premier League to realize its fullest value. But then, as mentioned, there's the risk and the expenditure between going from League One to the Championship to the Premier League. Spending money doesn't guarantee promotion. So it's a lot more than just a money problem. Then the other side to that is, what's the ceiling of the value of Reading Football Club? And while yes, you can look at Chelsea and what's going on there with Clear Lake Capital and Todd Bowley, but then Brentford are on the other end of the M4. They're a Premier League club in London. What's their value? And does Reading, objectively speaking, Reading doesn't surpass Brentford in terms of valuation. If we're using that proximity to London as a measure. So there's a lot from an outside investment perspective that you have to look at and look at what its true value. So if I have absolutely no idea what Brentford might be worth right now, but let's make the numbers easy. Let's say Brentford are worth 100 million. Let's just to make the numbers easy. Reading at its peak as a club, 45 miles outside, down the M4, puts that at its Premier League peak value at maybe 75, 80 million by by comparison, if you're using that. And then what type of investment does it take to get into the Premier League? Measure that against the risks, of both promotion and relegation. So all of a sudden that number just keeps tumbling, and so from an investment perspective, that maybe the club right now isn't worth the 28-30 million that Daddy Young thinks it should, even with the infrastructure in place.
Shaka, do you think there's an issue around why people are interested in buying football clubs? Because if you've seen what's happened, back in the Sir John Medeski days, he really cared about the club, wanted it to be part of the community, part of the town. Mm-hmm. We had the co-owner of Bristol Rovers on the other day. He talked about being a Bristol Rovers fan, how he, respects the fans. He said, "I'm the custodian. Even though my name, is on the ownership document, I'm essentially looking after the club. The club really belongs to the fans." So I think what's happened with our current owner is, when he took over, we got to the playoff final in 2017 against Huddersfield, and then it just never got any better after that, and he lost interest. I think that's possibly the summary of what happened there, because he thought, well, we're quite close to getting into the Premier League. I can put some more money in to make it happen. It didn't work. And going back to what the Bristol Rovers co-owner said, it is about doing it for the right reasons. Of course, people will look at it as an investment, but when you see the story that Wrexham have created, they were in the National League, they were struggling, they got the two celebrities involved. And there's a lot of global interest in that with the documentary, and I think that's opened a lot of people's eyes over in the US, etc. And I love Dylan's idea. Taylor Swift as the owner of Reading. I think that's fantastic.
Taylor Swift, my lord. Taylor Swift.
But Shaka,
Taylor Swift, my lord.
Do you think
Taylor?
Do you think, Shaka, that what's happened at Wrexham has just only increased the interest from American, businessmen into coming into English football?
Absolutely, it has, and I think what Wrexham showed, and what Ryan Reynolds, and I think Ryan Reynolds is great at telling stories, not just as an actor, but one of the kind of beauties of Wrexham and that story is where they were when they took over the football club, and then the kind of behind the scenes footage of the two owners kind of discussing potential transfers, and if we don't get promoted, and kind of just the kind of human side to football club ownership, which you don't get from Todd Bowley and Clear Lake Capital. And I don't mean to be picking on Todd Bowley or Clear Lake, but their names come to mind first of all. You don't get from a Stan Kroenke. You don't get that human side to the story, and again, part of that, or a big part of that reason is they bought over Premier League football clubs. The Wrexham story was totally different. They were non-league and trying to build something, and you kind of recognize the pitfalls, and I thought that was the interest to that story. If the same two owners had bought over a Premier League football club and tried to tell that exact same story, I don't think it resonated with Joe Public as much as it did with Wrexham, because all of a sudden you have people who never heard of Wrexham Football Club kind of buying into this story and their promotion and their push and the ups and downs that comes with football club ownership. So I think again it's about telling some of those stories, but tell them in a way that resonates with people in a way that just buying over a Premier League football club I don't think does.
And Dylan, do you want to come in again?
Just on that, I mean, how every time I speak to Sparky every week, Shaq, just to see what's been happening at the club and things that's happening in football because I'm doing lots of analysis stuff in the background for him. But he says Ryan Reynolds was phoning him every day. Parky, what do we do? Parky, is there anything that we need to do? Parky. I mean, Ryan Reynolds, a Hollywood superstar, is phoning Phil Parkinson, and we know how Mr. Happy Parky is. I mean, but that's how Wrexham work. You got this Hollywood actor phoning Parky and asking him if everything's all right and everything's done right. It's a story that would never happen if he or Newcastle United or even Everton. It's just a story that's like I say. I watched Deadpool the other day, and I watched The Hitman, The Bodyguard, and his wife, whatever it were. And you're thinking, well, I wonder if you phone Parky today and ask him how's training's been. It's brilliant.
And I think he just comes across so genuine. And to that point, and to Mark's previous question, his kind of involvement in the community and walking the streets of Wrexham and talking to the fans and kind of feeling their frustrations. I think similarly, as Mark was saying, football club ownership is you're a part of a community, and you have to see yourself as that. And I'll use Newcastle as an example, and Mike Ashley's ownership. Now, I think Mike Ashley got that wrong in that he bought over Newcastle with the visions of this being a global brand, kind of following the footsteps of a Manchester United or maybe what Manchester City were doing, or whatever it may be. And kind of neglected the historical fan base. Now, 95% at the very least of Newcastle's fan base comes from within a 5-mile radius of St. James's Park. And you cannot take your eye off that community. You cannot take your eye off that fan base in trying to grow the club. You have to continue to represent that fan base. And then while a lot has been made of the new ownership, one of the first things that they did was they invested in the community in that 5 miles in terms of they invested a lot in infrastructure, in terms of housing, in terms of hotels. They've earmarked a new training ground. So they've invested in the football club infrastructure, but also in the city itself. They've given a lot of money. They've been involved in a number of social campaigns in Newcastle. So they've made themselves a part of the fabric of the city itself. So again, while we're talking on paper, potentially the richest football club owners in the world's game, what they've done is focus on the community, and as a result, they've been accepted. They've been accepted in a way. They've been loved in a way that Mike Ashley never was.
And Johnny, do you want to come back in?
Yeah. First question is when did either of you realise that Phil Parkinson was going to be a Hollywood legend? And secondly, on serious note, Shaka, what do you make of the job Ruben Sellers has done and the team? Under these circumstances that when we've talked before and since what's been going on. And has there ever been a situation in your career where you may not be the same, but you've been under a similar pressure as the club or yourself, where you've had to, a bit of siege mentality?
Well, the short answer to that is no, really. Never been anything similar. Probably the closest I can think, and this is very different. When I was at Newcastle, I think it was at the end of our second going into third year, the club wanted to float on the stock market, following the example of Manchester United, and there was this kind of restructuring of the board. As part of that restructuring, they brought in a guy who dismissed Kevin Keegan, and which again in chasing business interests, I thought they lost sight of what made that football club tick. And as we all know, that went horribly wrong. Certainly if you compare it to the successes that Manchester United had with their own flotations on the stock market and how it propelled them as a football club. So again, yeah, you have to represent who your fan base are and your community is as in a way that makes sure the club continues to thrive. As far as things have gone now, and Johnny, I've not followed the fortunes of Reading that closely. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I have kind of kept an eye on results, more with the view of Reading staying in at the very least in League One, just understanding where I want Reading to be, where I feel they what they can achieve with sound ownership, because I think all that plays into each other. I don't feel that there's a separation of what happens on the field and what happens in the boardroom. There simply isn't. So I just say all that just to kind of, in the belief that Reading is closer to new ownership than maybe we want to feel right now, or it may seem right now. And then once that happens, I think the fortunes around the football club will change.
And Shaka, just want to talk to you about the competitiveness, perhaps the jeopardy that you don't have with American sports. So, we've gone into this season, and as Johnny rightly said, Ruben Sellers has done a great job. The team have had some great results against, some of the top teams. We've just beaten Huddersfield, who I think were in the playoffs. I think they were 5th when we played them. Drew against Birmingham, who are the favourites to go up. Drew against Charlton, who are going well. But then we go and lose to the bottom team, Leyton Orient, etc.
Right.
And we've got Burton Albion tonight, and it's almost like I have no idea what the result's going to be. Could be anything. But that, all of those big clubs, former Premier League clubs in League One. Do you think that's good for the game, or going back to when you and Dylan played for Reading? How much has the game changed? How much of it has become about business, and do you think that's a good thing?
I don't know. Listen, and I think while certainly the game has changed and the money in the game has changed and kind of forced the game to change with it. I see these. I see footballers having guardrails around finances and making sure the viability of the football clubs, in recognizing that football clubs are very much a part of society. But then, especially in the football league, and kind of knowing the guardrails that the football league has, why do so many small clubs find themselves in such financial trouble? And if there are these guardrails, and that for me is a concern. And while you have a number of smaller clubs going into all kinds of difficulty, and by the way, this isn't just about English football and the disparity between the Premier League and the Football League. Bordeaux, one of the most famed clubs in France, recently went under. You can look all across Europe and tell similar stories. So that for me is a little bit of a concern, because it doesn't add up that you have these guardrails, you have these kind of financial margins to keep yourself within, but yet somehow so many clubs are managing to find themselves afoul of that. And what's the solution? Because you could throw more money at the problem, but it just means you go outside the lines even further. So that for me is something I'm struggling to really understand.
And Shaka, just got a final question for you. Really appreciate your time, and it's flown by. Always good to chat to you. What would what's your inkling as to what might happen with Reading? We talked about the potential being in the Premier League relatively recently, the interest in football in England, and all the things we've talked about. What do you think might happen in the coming months, and what would you like to see for Reading?
I would like to see a change of ownership. I would like to see an ownership group that understands Reading's kind of place in the community and in the wider football ladder, and establish who they are. Establish who Reading Football Club is. I think on its par, Reading is a top six championship club. That if things go well, you get yourself promoted and you have a spell in the Premier League. If things go poorly, you're in the bottom half of the championship. I don't see Reading. Potentially, Reading should never be any worse than that. And again, and this goes back to the risk and kind of the inexact science. That's football, right? We lived it. Dylan Kerr, as Dylan would I'm sure would remember. 1992, we were like 8th in the league, or we came into that season at the end of the 91, 92 season. I think we were bottom half of the table. I joined in 92. We then went on this really nice run, but we were a mid-table League 2 team for all intents and purposes. But then all of a sudden, things just kind of click, and we go on. We win what is in today's money, League League One. League One, yeah. We go on. We win what in today's money is League One, and then all of a sudden, for no rhyme or reason, we finish second in what is today's money championship. That that's an inexact science. You can't nobody can bottle that up and sell it. It just chemistry just has we just had that chemistry, and now so I make that point to say that if the chemistry works, Reading should find themselves in the Premier League. If the chemistry doesn't work, we should be bottom half of the championship, no more. And understanding that, recognizing the role that Reading can play in terms of player development, being just outside London, the facilities that it has, how it can produce and sell players, kind of recognizing the business around selling players, and the long-term propositions to selling players. All those things I think are where Reading needs to find itself, and with the right ownership, can and should do that.
Yeah, well, Shaka, fantastic to speak to you. Really, really appreciate your time. Fascinating to listen to your views as someone, from the other side of the pond. So, and thanks for tuning in, watching us on YouTube and listening to us to this special international episode brought to you from Ireland, from the UK, from South Africa, and from the US as well. So, Shaka, thanks ever so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Always
Shaka.
good fun. Great speaking with you all.